How's it going, everyone? It's Foxxy here. A few weeks back, I'd asked for the viewers to vote on the next game for me to review, and obviously enough, Hour of Victory is your winner. Lucky me. Hour of Victory was developed by N-Fusion Interactive and published by Midway Games. N-Fusion is not well known. In fact, I'm sure 99% of you guys have never even heard of this company before, which is fine because they haven't really made that many games since they came out back in 2001. Hour of Victory was released back in June of 2007 for the Xbox 360. Later on, they released the game for PC in 2008, however, this was only in the UK. They didn't release it worldwide, more than likely due to poor sales and that Hour of Victory got horrible reviews from critics and the public alike. So with that said, guys, let's take a look into a game that is often regarded as the worst game of 2007. So, normally this is the part where I would talk about the story. This is the first time I can honestly say I have no fucking idea what is going on in this game. Partially because I couldn't hear what the characters were saying, and I'll talk more about why later on. I mean, yeah, it's a World War II shooter where of course you are fighting against the Nazis. That much is obvious. But things just sort of happen in this game completely out of the blue for no apparent reason. From what little I remember, the three playable characters are all summoned to go after a doctor who I can only assume has classified information about God knows what, and then something happens towards the end of the game, spoiler alert. Not that anyone cares, but I've had people cry in the comments about me spoiling a 10-plus-year-old game before. Anyway, you end up having to kill the doctor in the end because, I guess, why not? Again, I have no idea what's going on in this game. Perhaps I was just mesmerized by the terrible cutscenes that I couldn't pay attention to the story? You know what, that actually might be why. As I mentioned, you can play as one of the three characters before each mission, and each character has different advantages over the others, like Bull can use his grappling hook and perform long jumps, Ross is able to take more damage and has the ability to move heavy objects, while Taggart has a few stealthy abilities, plus he can pick locks and cut fences. Let me give them a little bit of credit. It's actually kinda nice that you can change the way you navigate a level based off what character you're using. The big problem, though, is that none of the character-based passageways really contribute all that much to the levels due to how linear the level designs are, thus completely destroying the point of the character-based passageways in the first place. The graphics as a whole look pretty crap. The most obvious thing is the character design. They almost kind of look like cavemen. They don't look natural at all. They're really stiff and oddly built. Sort of reminds me of Call of Duty 3's character models now that I really think about it. Maybe that's what the developer was trying to go for in Hour of Victory. I don't know, but it looks shit. Oh, and there's frame rate issues in this game, but honestly now, is anyone really surprised to hear me say this? The in-game and cutscene graphics, well, I can go and complain about them in detail, but for the sake of not making this a 30-minute review, let's just say the game looks really fucking ugly. While I'm on the subject of cutscenes, they just abruptly happen during gameplay, sometimes without any sort of setup. Same thing happens when it goes from a cutscene to gameplay. It just sort of happens. The cutscene right before you start playing is so goddamn funny, I have to show it in slow-mo. Look at this shit. Look at the guy who gets hit by the truck. The character model changes in mid-air as soon as he gets hit. When I noticed this while I started playing the game, I had to stop because I was crying from laughing so hard. You gotta think about it. Someone okayed this. Someone in the developmental team said that this was perfect. Holy shit. The sound design is absolutely appalling. The issue for me is that certain things like sound effects such as explosions, music, and guns are super loud, while the dialogue is quiet, sometimes even barely audible, forcing you to turn on the subtitles. However, the developers didn't even write up all of what the characters are saying. Like, if one character says 3 sentences, only the first sentence will show up on the subtitles. I don't understand how you could mess that up. This whole audio problem could have easily been fixed if they let you change the volumes around in the options menu, but of course, why would you be able to do that? They didn't give you the option in this game. The acting is simply put below average. Some people say it's ungodly bad. I'm sorry, it's not true. If you want to hear some truly awful acting, play Trouble Witches or Octomania. Keep in mind that I love both of these games.
Yes, Wei. I am Aru, your trusted servant for this journey. Now let's get going.
If my graduation depends on passing this test, then what choice do I have? Alright, let's go.
It comes with no surprise that there are plenty of graphical and sound bugs, most of which tend to occur later on in the game around the 3rd chapter. I've seen soldiers slide across maps without any leg movements, soldiers floating 30 feet high in the air, clipping into walls, sound going in and out, and the typical stuff like that. Moving on to the controls, they're just flat out terrible in Hour of Victory. Looking around and aiming your gun is difficult and annoying. The issue is that when you move the right analog around, it starts going slow and then goes quick. In turn, what happens is that you either always move too slow or too fast. There's no happy medium. And yes, even changing the sensitivity doesn't help you that much. You still run into problems. And the problems are even more obvious when you aim down the sights. What makes matters worse is the aim assist. It's so incredibly powerful that it actually hinders you in a way. It's most noticeable when you are using a sniper. If you aim even remotely near an enemy, it makes it go super slow when you're trying to move the analog to aim. I have absolutely no idea what made them decide on this strength of aim assist, but holy Christ, I've never seen anything quite like it before. Sure, turning it off probably makes it more comfortable to snipe and kill enemies at close range, but that's all it would help. This is one of those cases where I question if the PC version of the game has equally as bad controls. I doubt it because, you know, the mouse makes aiming more precise than, say, an analog on a controller. The length of the levels as well as the design of them, the only way I can describe this would be 100% schizophrenic. There are a lot of levels that maybe last 4 to 5 minutes tops, and others that drag on for around 20 minutes to complete. For example, there is a level where you fight your way through a straight line up a steep road, and that's it, while others have you navigating throughout a giant German castle. I don't think I've ever seen level design this inconsistent and random before. Most missions do not have checkpoints, which means that if you die in this game, you start over at the very beginning of a level, which is infuriating for the levels that take a long time to complete. For example, the level of Maelstrom almost made me quit playing this game entirely. You have to extract the Dr. Guy while using a tank. Despite you, as a human in this game, being able to take millions of bullets and be perfectly fine, your tank cannot regenerate health and goes down in, I think, 10 RPG shots or so. You can take an RPG to the fucking face in this game and be fine. And the worst part is that if you get out of your tank and move too much, the tank magically explodes and you fail the mission. This is definitely up there on my list of most frustrating levels in any game I've ever played. The AI in Hour of Victory is terrible, however, I've definitely seen worse, like with Deadfall Adventures, for example. In Hour of Victory, the AI will either rush after you, but more often they tend to just stand there out in the open and shoot. They didn't program them to even make any attempt to flank you, or do anything remotely smart. The stealthy parts are interesting, because they're shit. Most of the time, the enemy is completely oblivious to you. I've had instances where I was standing in a line of sight of an enemy, not that far away, and he never noticed me. There are also times where you'll kill a few guys and then go hide because more soldiers are heading to your room, and once they enter, they never even notice the dead bodies, even if they're standing on top of them. The combat, well, I don't know what I can even say about it other than it plays like any other generic first-person shooter. I mean, yeah, it makes half-assed attempts to do something different with the whole character-based passageway thing, but other than that, what you see is what you get. it's worth pointing out that the hit detection is actually really good, all things considered. And if it wasn't for the horrible controls, then the combat would be somewhat decent. Look, controls are probably the most important aspect of any game, FPS or otherwise, and if you mess it up even just a little, it affects the entire game. Hour of Victory is surprisingly pretty difficult on the easiest setting. The first chapter is by far the easiest. It really doesn't take you much effort at all to beat. However, once you get towards the middle of the game, things start to get challenging. There are a handful of moments in the game where you get swarmed with 10 guys at once, and if they're all shooting at you, you'll go down really quick. Plus, it takes forever for your health to start regenerating, so there are times where you have to play slow and careful instead of rushing around gun blazing like you could do in the first chapter of the game. The last thing I want to briefly discuss, and I know this has been really long, but I have to mention this. There is a actual boss fight in this game. I don't even know how to explain it. I mean, it's so random and out of place. It consists of you going up against waves of Germans and the boss doctor guy who can fucking teleport. Let me say that again. This guy teleports from one side of the room to another. Not only that, but he can take a massive amount of bullets to kill. Then, once you kill the guy, there's a 10-20 second long cutscene and the game is over. It's not even funny, but I could not stop laughing both when the boss fight started and after you killed him. Again, it's so bizarre, it's so out of place. I can only assume they did this because they wrote themselves into a corner and had no idea how to actually end the game. And now we have my final thoughts. There were moments where I was bored, furious, confused, crying from laughing, moments that made my jaw drop due to just the sheer shitness of this game. However, I don't think I could say that this is the worst game I've ever played of my entire life. It's up there, let me tell you. That being said, I do not need or ever want to play this game again. Maybe if friends come over and want to see this game for themselves, then there's a very slight possibility. But on my own, there's no way. There's no redeeming qualities to Hour of Victory in any way, shape, or form other than the fact that yes, it's playable for what it's worth. There are a lot of terrible games out there. Some that are so bad it's funny, and others that are so bad you feel physical pain. This combines both of them, but even then, I wouldn't even recommend playing this game at all, even for those of you who are like me and love playing terrible games. I paid $1 for this game at a flea market, and you can find this at GameStop for the same price. However, I couldn't imagine paying $60 for a game like this back when it first came out. Even though I said that this is not the worst game I've ever played, do I agree that it's the worst game of 2007? Honestly, I don't know. I would have to look around for a list of terrible games that came out in that year and play them one by one to find out. However, I can say that this is probably the worst Xbox 360 exclusive I have yet to play. So yeah, that's Hour of Victory. I have no idea how to end this review other than showing this cutscene again. Thanks for watching, and to those of you who voted for me to play this horrendous mess of a game, all I can say is fuck